So again, in the text messages, I think the conversation about how freak
Stand. He was sitting back in his chair, very relaxed, just hands clasped.
From the moment Diddy's legal team began cross-examining Cassie Ventura, it was clear they weren't prepared, and worse, they were desperate. Instead of poking holes in her testimony, they ended up reinforcing it. Case in point, they brought up a freak-off involving baby oil, supposedly to make Cassie look wild and unreliable. But instead, it painted a disturbing picture of the environment Diddy created, one where drugs, coercion, and sexual control were normalized. It backfired completely. Then came the text messages that Diddy's own team submitted into evidence, thinking they'd discredit Cassie. Instead, they lined up with her timeline of abuse almost perfectly. Her stories of manipulation, isolation, and explosive violence weren't just believable. They were now backed up by Diddy's own digital trail. Every attempt to rattle her on the stand only made her more credible. Even the jury seemed to notice the defense fumbling. The lawyers appeared disorganized, their tone erratic, and their strategy confused, like they weren't trying to prove Diddy's innocence, but just throw enough chaos at the wall to see what might stick. At one point, it looked like Diddy's lawyers were trying to turn the courtroom into a circus, and the judge shut it down, fast and hard. The defense strategy was clear: discredit Cassie, confuse the jury, and create enough noise to drown out the truth. But instead of precision, they brought chaos. They bombarded Cassie with out-of-context text messages, irrelevant questions about her past, and even tried to bring up gossip-level rumors, the kind you'd expect to see in a tabloid, not in federal court. They asked her about her wardrobe choices, her social media posts from years ago. Even a photo from a red carpet event was suddenly supposed to prove something about her credibility. Cassie, to her credit, stayed composed, but the tension in the courtroom was undeniable, and the judge wasn't having it. He stepped in, more than once, cutting off Diddy's legal team mid-question. His tone sharpened. He told them to stick to the facts, stop badgering the witness, and in one now viral moment, issued a stern warning. This courtroom is not your PR battlefield. That line hit hard. This isn't just courtroom etiquette, it's a legal signal. When a judge interrupts cross-examination multiple times, it sends a message to the jury. Something is off here, and it's not Cassie. The judge even threatened sanctions at one point, which is rare in a case like this. He made it clear the defense was walking a fine line, and if they kept pushing stunts over substance, there would be consequences. And here's what that really means. Diddy's team is losing control of the narrative. The courtroom isn't bending to their strategy, and the judge is making sure of it. He's keeping this trial focused on what matters: the abuse, the manipulation, the allegations that sparked this entire legal firestorm. So while Diddy might be used to controlling the headlines, the guest lists, and the VIP rooms this time, he's in a room he can't control, and the judge is holding the gavel.
I think what the defense is going to say is that this wasn't blackmail, this was not coercion.
At first, when Cassie filed that lawsuit, the response was split. There was confusion, suspicion. People asked, why now? Why settle so fast? Is this just another money grab? Even some fans said, she was with him for years. If it was so bad, why didn't she leave sooner? But then came the courtroom. The sworn testimony, the details, the tone, the controlled delivery. Cassie didn't come off desperate. She came off focused, measured, steady. Her words didn't sound like revenge. They sounded like truth. And something shifted. The doubts started to fade. The judgment started to reverse. People started listening. Not with skepticism, but with open eyes. Social media, the true court of public opinion, began to move like a wave. First, the legal community started reacting. Lawyers on TikTok broke down the transcript, frame by frame, saying things like, "This is the most consistent and calmly delivered cross-examination we've seen in a celebrity case in years." Cassie's responses are razor sharp. She's not cracking. She's not stalling. Then came the content creators, the gossip channels, the commentators who usually ride the fence. They weren't riding this one. They were calling it what it was: dark, disturbing, real. Even fans who once defended Diddy are going silent, or worse, for him, they're flipping sides. Influencers who used to post about his parties are quietly deleting content. Former collaborators are distancing themselves. Some are pretending they never even knew him. The industry smell test is shifting. And Diddy? He's starting to reek of cancel energy. And then there's the music. A slow purge is happening. People are removing his tracks from their playlists. DJs are skipping his songs in the club. TikTok creators are refusing to use his beats, saying, "I'm not making content to the soundtrack of someone accused of this." It's like people are waking up and saying, "We can't dance through someone else's trauma anymore." This isn't just some PR crisis. This is the start of something deeper, a cultural rejection, a reckoning that reminds people that no one, no matter how rich, how powerful, how legendary, is immune. We saw it with Cosby, with Weinstein, with R. Kelly, and now the tide is turning on Diddy. And at the center of that tide, a woman the world once called a former girlfriend now has a new title: whistleblower, survivor, truth teller. Cassie isn't just reclaiming her story, she's rewriting his. When the words "freak off" first hit the internet, people laughed. It sounded absurd, cartoonish, like something out of a bad 2000s reality show. Freak off? What is this, a canceled BET special? Sounds like some grown-up Hunger Games. The memes came fast. Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, everyone joked about it. People imagined velvet rooms with spinning beds, moody lighting, Diddy in a silk robe handing out NDAs like party favors. It became a punchline, a viral moment. Another chapter in the book of celebs are weird. But when those messages, those actual court-admitted messages, were read out loud, and when Cassie, in that cold, echoing courtroom, described what really happened in those so-called freak-offs, the laughing stopped. Suddenly, this wasn't quirky. It was coercive. It wasn't edgy. It was exploitative. Cassie painted a picture that was nothing like the internet fantasy. No orgy for fun atmosphere, no luxury kink club vibes. Instead, she described scenarios that were orchestrated, pressured, and dehumanizing. She talked about being ordered to recruit other women, being filmed without full consent, being expected to perform, being too afraid to say no. And Diddy? He wasn't just a participant. He was the puppet master, curating, controlling, and watching with the kind of detachment that turns pleasure into power. One moment in her testimony hit like a gut punch. "I didn't want to do it, but saying no wasn't really an option." That sentence shattered the illusion, because suddenly those freak-offs weren't sex-positive, weren't consensual, weren't just celebrity wildness. They were rituals of control. And now the term freak-off lives in a completely different space online, not as a meme, but as a red flag, a trigger, a phrase that marks the moment pop culture stopped laughing and started looking closer. It's a cultural shift, and it's happening in real time. Influencers who joked about it are now issuing apologies. Podcasters are deleting episodes. Even comedians are saying, "Yeah, maybe this one isn't funny anymore." Because when the fantasy is peeled back, and what's left is fear, silence, and coercion, there's nothing sexy about that. The freak-offs are no longer a meme, they're evidence, and the world is finally seeing them that way.
Back from that break, he was conferring a lot with his defense counsel, but as soon as
At first, when the lawsuits dropped and the headlines screamed, "Cassie sues Diddy for abuse," there were defenders. Loud ones, commentators, bloggers, fans, even industry insiders. They rushed in like it was their job. Why now? She stayed, didn't she? She's just mad he didn't marry her. Clout chaser. The usual chorus. And Diddy? He denied it all. Lawyers issued statements. His PR machine went into overdrive, painting the whole thing as extortion. To many, that was enough. The image of Diddy, mogul, bad boy, visionary, businessman, was hard to shake. He changed the culture, they'd say. He's an icon. But now, after this, the videos, the lawsuit details, Cassie's cross-examination, the text messages, the testimonies, the raids, the whispers, the evidence stacking like bricks, the silence is deafening. Where are those same people now? Where are the think pieces defending him? Where are the podcasts dissecting her motives? Gone, deleted, archived, scrubbed. Because suddenly, the cost of defending Diddy publicly is too high. Sponsors are watching, audiences are less forgiving. And most of all, the truth feels a little too real now. This isn't just some celebrity he said, she said anymore. It's a pattern, a web of accusations spanning decades. And people are starting to connect the dots. Even fans who once idolized him are saying, I don't know, something feels off. Because it's not just Cassie. It's his former employees, other exes, producers, models, party guests, even former friends who now say, yeah, we saw stuff. We just didn't say anything back then. And now the people who once screamed false accusations are whispering, maybe we got it wrong. This is what happens when the benefit of the doubt finally runs out. And for Diddy, it may already be too late to get it back. Cassie was the first to say it all out loud, but she wasn't the only one living it. Because the moment her lawsuit hit, it was like a dam broke. More women stepped forward, quietly, anonymously, fearfully. And their stories, they didn't just sound similar, they rhymed. Same setting. Penthouses, studios, hotels, private jets. Same tactics. Control, manipulation, gaslighting. Same punishment, emotional warfare, violence, threats. And often, the same outcome. Silence bought with NDAs, hush money, or pure fear. And then came the raids, the Homeland Security involvement, the sudden interest from federal authorities. What they were looking for? We still don't know. But the timing? Chilling. Because suddenly, Cassie's story wasn't a one-off. It was the tip of a very dark iceberg. Former Bad Boy employees started hinting at things they saw but didn't understand at the time. Studio engineers remembered screams behind locked doors. Security staff recalled unusual requests. Models who once smiled in Diddy's videos began telling a different version of those nights. Women who hadn't spoken in over a decade were finally ready to say, "It happened to me too." And all of it echoed the same themes: power, control, dehumanization. This wasn't about parties. It wasn't about industry drama. It was about survival. And the scariest part? Some of these stories go back over 20 years. They were whispered, dismissed, forgotten, because the man at the center was just too rich, too famous, too untouchable. Until now. Now the whispers have become a chorus. And that chorus is saying, Cassie wasn't the first. She just refused to be the last.
Relatively gentle, but here was a woman who is a mother now.
What makes this story even more jaw-dropping isn't just the abuse and coercion allegedly endured by Cassie and others. It's how long this darkness stayed hidden in plain sight, lurking behind the glitz and glam of the music world. For years, those closest to the scene whispered warnings, but the public never heard the truth. Why? Because when you're dealing with a figure like Diddy, one of the most powerful men in the entertainment business, speaking out can come at an enormous cost. The music industry has long been a place where loyalty, power, and image are fiercely guarded. Insiders tell us that red flags about Diddy's behavior had been floating around for years. Rumors of control, manipulation, and even abuse. But those whispers were met with silence. People knew something wasn't right, yet the fear of retaliation, career damage, or being blacklisted kept them from speaking up. The unspoken rule was simple: don't rock the boat when the kingpin is at the helm. Managers, record label executives, producers, and even fellow artists often turned a blind eye. They dismissed the rumors as industry gossip or tabloid nonsense, but behind closed doors, many had serious concerns. Yet, the culture around Diddy was one of absolute loyalty. To challenge him was to risk everything. "He's untouchable," said one source who asked to remain anonymous. People didn't want to lose their careers or the perks that came with being in his inner circle. What's more chilling is that this silence was not just passive complicity, it was actively enforced. Documents leaked in recent weeks reveal that non-disclosure agreements were routinely handed out to those who might have information damaging to Diddy's reputation. Legal teams worked relentlessly to cover up stories that could have blown the lid off years ago. Industry insiders paint a picture of a carefully crafted empire where power dynamics kept victims silent and shielded the man at the center. The public only saw the dazzling side: sold-out shows, luxury yachts, red carpet moments, and massive business deals. Behind the scenes, however, there was a different story, one of pain and control hidden beneath the veneer of success. But now, as the courtroom drama unfolds and more testimonies come to light, the walls are beginning to crumble. Survivors are finding their voices, lawyers are digging deeper, and journalists are uncovering layers of silence and protection that allowed this to go on for so long. This reckoning is sending shockwaves through the music industry. Questions are being asked about how such power could be wielded unchecked for so long. Calls for systemic change and greater accountability are growing louder. And it's becoming clear that the era of silence and protection for powerful men in entertainment is finally ending. One insider put it simply, "This isn't just about Diddy anymore. It's about a whole system that allowed abuse to thrive. And that system is about to be exposed." The question now is whether the industry will learn from this or continue to turn a blind eye. One thing's for sure, the people who stayed silent for so long won't be able to do so much longer. The court of public opinion and justice is watching closely.
Was said so far inside that courtroom. So, as I was mentioning,
As the trial intensifies, one figure stands out as a force trying to keep this sprawling courtroom drama from spiraling completely out of control: the judge. From day one, the judge has made it clear that patience is wearing thin, especially when it comes to the defense team's repeated delays and last-minute tactics. You can almost feel the tension in the courtroom every time the judge addresses the defense lawyers: stern, no nonsense, and visibly frustrated. This trial isn't just a procedural headache. It's a high-stakes battle with a potential life sentence on the line, and the judge is determined to keep things moving efficiently, especially considering Cassie's advanced pregnancy. At any moment, she could go into labor, and that adds a whole other layer of urgency to this already complicated case. The judge's patience was put to the test when the defense team shocked the court by submitting a staggering 400 new exhibits overnight. Yes, 400 pieces of evidence, all dumped at the 11th hour in an attempt to undermine Cassie's testimony. This move didn't just ruffle a few feathers, it ignited outright fury from both the prosecution and the bench. The judge slammed the defense for these blatant delay tactics, accusing them of trying to run out the clock and derail the trial's timeline. "You told me you'd be done by Friday," the judge snapped, refusing to let the defense push this out any longer. He limited their cross-examination time to just the next day and Friday morning. No extensions. This stern rebuke exposed a glaring weakness in the defense's strategy, a lack of preparation and coherence. Throughout the trial, the defense has seemed scattered, struggling to present a focused narrative or effective evidence. Their opening statement alone took an hour, filled with meandering points and confusing rhetoric, while the prosecution's was tight, clear, and punchy, clocking in at just 30 minutes. The contrast couldn't be more telling. This defense is grasping at straws, desperately trying to prove that Cassie was a willing participant in the chaotic, often abusive, freak-off lifestyle, rather than a victim coerced into it. The judge's push to keep the trial moving fast isn't just about procedure, it's about fairness and the reality of Cassie's condition. Everyone knows this trial could drag on for weeks or even months, but with Cassie 8.5 months pregnant, the timeline simply can't stretch indefinitely. The judge's firm stance sends a clear message. This case demands respect for its victims and the truth, not endless delays. The atmosphere in the courtroom reflects this pressure. You can see it in the tired eyes of attorneys rushing through evidence, the tension between defense and prosecution growing thicker, and in Cassie herself, who is clearly fatigued but resolute. Every moment counts now, and the judge's no-nonsense approach is the only thing holding this complex case together. This isn't just a trial about allegations anymore. It's a race against time to deliver justice before circumstances shift. the judge's role has become pivotal, balancing the rights of the accused with the well-being of the witness, and trying to prevent this high-profile case from becoming a drawn-out spectacle. As this chapter unfolds, one thing is certain: the courtroom drama will only intensify, and every second will count. Will the defense find the breakthrough they desperately need in this shrinking window? Or will the prosecution's narrative, bolstered by the judge's firm hand, continue to hold strong? The countdown has begun, and the whole world is watching,